Hey y'all, Scott here, and I have to say, I'm pretty tired of the whole having a reputation thing, so I decided to upload a video of me eating cereal to a pornographic website. I'm not a fan of having an image, and a good one at that, so let's kill all remaining reputation I have after the whole cereal porn debacle by talking about how awful Breath of the Wild is, why Nintendo is doomed, and why I'm rooting for leprosy. Because I'm that evil of a human being.
First off, let's set a few things straight. I have never beaten a Zelda game until Breath of the Wild. I know, I'm one of those fake fans. Listen, I've played a ton of Zelda games and greatly enjoyed them all. I just never got around to beating them. I know I can smell my guilt too, and it is poignant. But now that I beat Breath of the Wild, who knows? Maybe I can beat all the Zelda games and make some killer and overhyped Scott the Woz episodes about them. Maybe someday. But as you all probably assumed, I'm going to be talking about a few issues Breath of the Wild has. These issues can range from actual flaws to minor nitpicks, but regardless, these are the things I found problematic in Breath of the Wild. Spoilers. One of the easier flaws to point out is the voice acting. It's not that it's bad, it's just painfully mediocre. The voice actors aren't horrible, but it feels like Nintendo just gave them a script for the first time and used their first take reading it, giving them no context of the scene they were reading for.
I owe you big for this. Because of you, my spirit is finally free. Can't thank you enough.
Almost all characters have a weird variance in tone throughout one sentence. A lot of times they make weird pauses or don't pause at all where they should have. Also, I always felt that people wanted voice acting in Zelda to combat the 60 acres of text one would have to read in each game. There is still a lot of text in this game that isn't voice acted, and voice acting is only really in important cutscenes, and it doesn't even last that awfully long. Like I said, the voice actors do the job and get decent enough voice acting in a Zelda game, but man, it could have been so much better. I really do quite like the shrines in Breath of the Wild. They house nice little bite-sized dungeons with excellent puzzles that have 1 to 3 steps involved. The spirit orbs obtained from them can be exchanged for heart containers or more stamina, which makes finding and completing the shrines that much more enticing and rewarding. Plus, they can be used as fast travel points, which makes traversing the world a breeze. What I don't like about the shrines is that they all look the same. I know there's 120 of them, so having a different design for them all would be asking a bit much. But it would have been nice if there were 4 or 5 different shrine interior designs, so every 30 or so shrines were different. Just so then it's more interesting when you discover them, because who knows what it'll look like inside. Every time I enter a shrine, the layout of the room feels automatically generated by a computer. The puzzles obviously feel like they were made by a person, but the room I explore feels the exact same as the other 119 rooms I can explore. Here's the thing about weapon degradation. I think it's incredibly smart in this game. It forces you to use unconventional weapons against enemies and learn how to use your resources wisely. By the end of the game, since you had to use basically all the weapons in the game to defend yourself, you're a pro with the combat. That being said, I can't sit here and pretend the weapons breaking so quickly isn't annoying. I like the fact that they break. It forces the player to be creative and smart with combat. But I would have liked each weapon to be a bit more durable with a few extra hits. Easy target, so I won't linger on this sucker for that long. But yeah, the frame rate can blow sometimes. It never made the game unfair or anything, but it is annoying and sometimes makes me feel like my Switch is going to puke. You beat the final boss, the enemy that has been built up since the very beginning of the game, Calamity Ganon and Dark Beast Ganon. The final fights are great, just an epic feeling to them. Like I said, with the weapon degradation, that factor forced me to master the combat in the game, so flurry rushes and smart uses of my runes and weapons were abundant, and I didn't die once on the final boss, but that's not to say it was easy. After getting the last hit in, Zelda is free and asks Link if he remembered her. Post-credits, the champions and King Rome's spirits are freed, and if you recalled all the memories, you get an extra cutscene showing Link and Zelda about to embark on reconstructing Hyrule. And then, you go back to the main menu, seeing that the last save point in the game was right before entering the final boss. Basically, the only thing you get for beating the final boss is a star on your profile. Here's why I hate this. For one, to me, it goes against one of the major things the game taught me. Everything affects everything, or at least a lot affects a lot. The game strives to give off a feeling of everything you do in this world matters and affects something as it would in real life. Shooting fire arrows at thorns, they burn. Pushing a boulder off a cliff, that thing is going to tumble down realistically and will also hurt enemies. Nighttime, enemies are asleep at their camp. Why wouldn't this continue with the ending? Why isn't Hyrule Castle ridden of Ganon's evil? I wanted to explore the castle without all of the evil goop and enemies in it. Secondly, the game still has Destroy Ganon on the adventure log, as if you have yet to do it. Listen, I get it. A lot of Breath of the Wild's world is the way it is because of Calamity Ganon, and a lot of the characters talk about how Ganon is about to destroy the world. The way this game is set up makes it so you almost don't have to talk to anybody or free any divine beast or anything to beat Ganon. So doing these after beating the final boss makes a lot of the dialogue and cutscenes nonsensical. However, I don't think anybody would really care if they beat Ganon and played through the rest of the game with people talking as if Ganon is still a threat. I think nobody actually would play through the game and beat Ganon without doing a good chunk of the story bits. I always felt that the only people who were going to beat Ganon without touching any story details were speedrunners or people who already beat the game. But at the very least, the game could have thrown you something for beating the final boss. A piece of armor, weaponry, whatever, just something to have because you faced evil in the eye and defeated Ganon rather than just a star on your profile. Without being able to see that Hyrule Castle is now free of evil or any kind of tangible reward, I just kind of felt empty after beating the final boss. But nothing compares to the worst of the worst when it comes to Breath of the Wild. I know Zelda and Link aren't conventionally lovers. They were in Skyward Sword, but here, Link is basically a knight who vows to protect Zelda. But man, I just wanted Zelda to hug Link or something at the end. She is so focused on being a vital part of Hyrule and to be more than just the princess. And in the memories, she's cold towards Link at first, but gradually warms up to him and eventually treats him as a great friend. I wanted a hug.
At the end of the day, Breath of the Wild is an amazing experience and one of the most memorable video games I've played in recent memory. At the very least, I'd probably rate it a 9 out of 10, and my official score would probably be higher than that. It's just that, like all games, it does have flaws. So if you have any problems with Breath of the Wild I didn't talk about here, be sure to let me know. And also, if you want to know exactly why I hate Breath of the Wild so much, be sure to email me at my brand new email, scotthatesbreathofthewild@gmail.com, and to also follow my new YouTube channel, Scott Hates Breath of the Wild, where we talk about any and all things about hating Breath of the Wild.
Oh hi, I didn't see you there. Hey everybody, my name is Scott Hates Breath of the Wild, and I really hate Breath of the Wild, and you should hate Breath of the Wild too, because this not a good game. Please subscribe. I make mostly hourly content. Sometimes I get a little busy, so I might miss an hour here or there. But please subscribe. Please.
Hey y'all, Scott here. I got my Halloween costume in early this year. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild released to critical acclaim in March of 2017. This was immediately recognizable as one of the most impactful gaming moments in recent memory, hell, of all time even, which makes it that much more impactful as I throw it off this bridge. At the launch of Nintendo Switch, this was right alongside it, and was the only thing I cared about on that system for the next month and a half. How impressive. I'd say it was the only thing I cared about in general for a bit there. This ended up being the first Zelda game I officially beat. Even though I dabbled in most of the other games throughout the years and really liked what I played, I never saw them through to the end. But it was Breath of the Wild that truly hooked me and made it so much easier to appreciate and understand what makes Zelda special. And judging by how much this game sold, outselling Super Mario Odyssey, pushing the series to more widespread popularity than ever before, even seeing more traditional titles like Link's Awakening and Skyward Sword HD doing better than most comparable games ever did, it's obvious many people had a similar experience to me. Yes, also back in 2017, I decided to ruin my reputation in more ways than one and talk about a few problems I had with the game. Hey, when you love somebody, you gotta tell them how it is sometimes.
Dad, I hate you.
I worded this by saying Breath of the Wild isn't perfect. Nothing is.
damn it.
While I know nobody who gave this game a 10 out of 10 was actually saying it was perfect, it was the easiest way to get my point across. To talk about all the annoyances I had with the game that I felt could be improved upon in a potential sequel. And, wouldn't you know? Tears of the Kingdom isn't perfect.
Well, after 6 years of waiting for a follow-up, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom released on May 12th, 2023. And much like Breath of the Wild, it received 10 out of 10s across the board. This was considered a landmark sequel to a landmark title, something that outdid something undoable. Now, in my opinion...
Jesus Christ! Oh my god, I can go underground, I can go up so high and then fall all the way down below, make my own contraptions? How is this running on a broken Nintendo Switch? The new abilities are insane! I can fuse weapons with anything, rewind objects in time, ascend through ceilings. The puzzles are so creative. The world is never ending with so many finely crafted things to do. Yeah!
With that being said, I have a few complaints. Now, you may be saying, Scott, why bother with the pointless negativity? You love this game, just embrace it. I did. And hey, being negative is healthy. The world could use more negativity. Like, haven't you heard? Things have been too positive lately. Son of a bitch.
In my opinion, Breath of the Wild has one of the greatest openings in all of gaming. Not only for what it is, but what it represented at the time. After the release of Skyward Sword, many lamented the slow openings Zelda titles were notorious for having. Being over-tutorialized, so much dialogue and exposition, and it takes like 2 hours to actually get going. But with this game, you're getting your bearings in the Shrine of Resurrection for 5 minutes. Once you enter the open world, one quick title sequence, pan over to the old man who you can go up to for advice on what to do next. But at this point, it's all up to you. Sure, to get your paraglider to advance past this area, you have to visit the 4 shrines and tower, but there aren't excessive cutscenes and dialogue telling you to do this. Hell, talking to the old man is how you're directly told what to do, and while that's all really quick and painless, you can just flat out ignore them and go to these things yourself if you want. And because of that, I always felt free in this game to do anything I pleased. Even in the opening hour where you're at your most limited, what I saw was an immediate world of endless possibilities. Tears of the Kingdom, on the other hand, this opening isn't bad. It does the job and has some incredibly memorable moments. Though throughout the whole thing, I was constantly thinking to myself, I think I preferred Breath of the Wild's intro. The first bit of gameplay features Link and Zelda exploring the depths of Hyrule Castle, and you walk forward, cutscene, walk forward, cutscene, walk forward, cutscene, then 10 more minutes of cutscenes, and then the tutorial actually begins, which this is a perfectly fine intro. Feels like many other AAA games. But that's just the thing here. It feels like it's doing the exact thing Breath of the Wild set out not to do. Because what follows is nearly 3 hours of the Great Sky Island, the first major area in the game, here to give and teach you the major new abilities and reveal more of the plot. And my god, there's so much dialogue, so much stopping to tell you something you already know, and everything is so damn slow. This island is designed in a way where you don't explore it like the Great Plateau, the first area in Breath of the Wild. It's far more linear. It doesn't look like it, but once you start playing, you realize how there's really not as much to do here other than exactly what the game wants you to do. You just have to keep moving forward to the next story-beating cutscene, which just felt strange from the sequel to the game that defied this. But to be fair, the abilities you get kinda require more tinkering to fully understand, so obviously this opening is more guided for a reason. I just think it could have been refined to be quicker, more impactful, more fun, because the Great Plateau could have been home to an entire game, honestly. When I was able to leave, I wasn't going, thank Christ. My eyes widened, thinking, oh, things just expanded so much. I couldn't wait to get off of this goddamn thing.
Geez, Scott, with opinions like those, you should monetize them. Have people call in to tell you off. And as somebody with dog shit opinions would say, that's a horrible idea. Hi, my name is YouTube user Scott Hates Breath of the Wild. I make hourly content on hating Breath of the Wild and failing to make hourly content on hating Breath of the Wild for the past 6 years. And with Breath of the Wild's sequel releasing, I found this to be the perfect opportunity to take our first caller.
Scott, I'm going to find you and skin you alive!
This is Hate Scott, why not? Let's see what everybody has to say.
Hey there, Scott. Heard you weren't the biggest fan of Tears of the Kingdom. I'm gonna do some cartoonishly evil shit to you. Your house is gonna look like a 30-car pileup. Roman gladiator levels of bullshit. When they do your fucking autopsy, you're gonna have a different set of teeth.
Constructive criticism. Yum, yum, yum.
You're a jackass! If you think Tears of the Kingdom is the fucking best game ever made, I will come to Ohio and beat your ass!
Like I said, the abilities you have in this game take some getting used to, and justifiably so. I mean, these things are incredible feats of game design and engineering, and that all comes at a price. Strange product to offer, but to each their own. The Ultra Hand ability is ingenious, and a miracle it works as well as it does. Being able to grab and manipulate objects, sticking them together to other things to create whatever you can imagine, all without the game fucking exploding. That's a miracle, but it makes sense, because instead, it is I who explodes. Ultra Hand is so damn funky, man. Just trying to rotate an object exactly how you want is so hard to get used to, and when you stick an item together and want to unstick them, you have to wiggle the right stick. Why? I get you're trying to convey the feeling of actually unsticking something in real life, but there are a fair amount of buttons not being used when you have Ultra Hand enabled. Why can't I just hit one of those instead? And the act of sticking things together can be kind of finicky. Man, either I'm bad at this game, or this ability can be pretty clunky sometimes, and I'm bad at this game. But let's talk one of our other new abilities. Fuse. Much like how you can attach objects together with Ultra Hand, you can attach pretty much anything in your inventory together to create stronger items or give them different properties, which opens up so many doors. Let's attach something to an arrow. Why is this more cumbersome than my taxes? Which isn't saying much, but still. Fusing a material to an arrow you've drawn is done via this menu, which is just every single material you have in a single file line. It works, it's easy enough, but you collect hundreds of materials in this game, and there's so much empty space on the screen, you cannot tell me this was the best solution here. And you know what's crazy? This is one of the best ways Fuse is implemented. Because if we want to fuse our sword or shield with anything in our inventory, you can't do it like with arrows. No. You have to select the item in the pause menu, hold it, drop it in game, select Fuse on your ability wheel, and then combine it with what you're currently holding. Well, son of a bitch, I had an open 15 seconds in my schedule to fill in there. Thank you, Tears of the Kingdom. Why do I have to do all this? It should be as simple as selecting the item in your menu and hitting a fuse button. That's basically how it works for arrows. I get they want you to fuse with items on the fly when you find them in the world, and the ability works well in that scenario. But using it in menus with arrows without having to select the ability, while not being able to use it in menus with everything else and needing to have fuse selected while doing it, is inconsistent. It's clunky. I've lost many a material dropping it in the world to fuse with, and oh, it probably fell off this clip. What else are clips for, right? Let's try this again. I want to fuse a rocket to my shield. There's an enemy nearby. Let me take care of that. Son of a bitch. Now these abilities are selected by holding down L to access this wheel containing all of these special little things we can do, like map. Damn, this game has abilities through the fucking roof.
Did you hear what you can do in Tears of the Kingdom? You can boot up the game, you can press start, you can sit there after pressing start.
Why does this wheel have so much filler? Why is the map here when I can more quickly access it by hitting minus? Why is Amiibo here when you can just put that in the pause menu? Like, when are we gonna need that at a moment's notice? And these being here increases my baffle output tenfold when there are so many things that would benefit from being selectable this way. Take, for example, the Sage abilities, your reward for beating the temples. And what a reward they are. Congratulations, you saved the world. This was cool. During my first temple, I found having a companion with a special ability to be really useful and wasn't looking forward to completing it and having to go back to how things were before. So to get the spirit of that companion as a reward and effectively having them by my side throughout the rest of the game was a treat. But then you get another, and another, and another. And when you have all of them following you around and they clog up the screen, it can be overwhelming, but that's not even the half of it. To use their abilities, you have to walk up to each of them manually and hit A, but since these are computer-controlled companions, sometimes they're not where you want them to be, or they're actively running away from you, or another one butts in front of the one you want and you activate the wrong ability. Having these guys follow you around and fight with you is nice. It makes the adventure feel less lonely, and their abilities can be very useful. But this is Clunk 101. Did you ever go to Clunk school?
Open this jar.
they did. You can turn each stage on or off from the pause menu, though their abilities are so useful at a moment's notice, I'm willing to put up with said clunk to just have them around at all times. Though if they were a part of the ability wheel, it would be much easier to warrant doing this. I don't know, this game just made some funky decisions with its interface. Speaking of which... Spot the difference.
Yeah, this one's on the left.
After waiting over 6 years, I was definitely excited to see what Nintendo did to address many complaints and issues with Breath of the Wild while also improving the overall experience. Apparently the guy for that was out. Yeah, when I look back at the complaints I had and the complaints others had, Tears of the Kingdom doesn't really fix much of this. It's pretty much Breath of the Wild, warts and all, with a big fat layer of new stuff laid on top of it. The user interface looks identical, and while it's functional, I think a redesign would have gone a long way. We're already reusing so much from the previous game here, that the least you could do is choose a different font. The inventory and map screens at least saw a few tweaks, but not enough to feel all that distinct or improved. In fact, the only thing I originally thought they changed was the color here. The graphics, practically identical. I mean, from a technical standpoint, yes, they've made improvements, and while there's impressive tech and hard work behind them, it's all pretty damn subtle in practice. Without looking up the dirty details, this looks the same. Speaking of looking the same, that was my problem with the shrines in Breath of the Wild. When you have 120 mini dungeons to complete and they all look identical, it can become a bit grating. And in Tears of the Kingdom, thankfully, they gave us new interior and exterior designs for the shrines. For this game, every shrine still looks the same. What a lineup! Weapon degradation, something complained about to no end previously. It's still here. Hell, it's even worse. Pretty much every sword you pick up now is rusted, meaning they last not. But this is to incentivize you to fuse your weapons to make them more durable, which in practice, I mean, sure it works, but when you have to give us pretty much nothing but rusted weapons on the surface to get us to do it, it doesn't end up feeling like it makes a huge difference to me. But you can also repair your weapons by going up to Octoroks, dropping your weapon, having them suck it up, spit it back out, it'll be brand new, and often have a status buff. And how did I learn to do this? I didn't! This is such a hidden feature. You would only discover it by accident on your own, and you can only do it once with each Octorok. So what, this solves everything? Well, head down to the depths. There, you can find non-rusted weapons, but goddamn, I gotta do all this to get more than 5 hits out of a sword? I always appreciated weapon degradation. I felt it pushed you to be creative and act on the spot in combat once a weapon broke, forcing you to try all the weapons in the game rather than sticking to only a handful. And with the introduction of Fuse, this is pushed even further. Now, it's all about this. A weapon about to break? Experiment. Combine it with something to keep it alive for just a bit longer, and hey, you may discover a great weapon setup that way. I think this is all ingenious, but it doesn't really solve my problem with weapon degradation. I just wanted them to last a little bit longer. Now, they last shorter by default, and I gotta do all this junk for them to be usable past like one enemy. This solution is perfect on paper. It keeps the game balanced with breakable weapons while offering a solution that still promotes experimentation. But because 95% of the weapons are rusted and on average last shorter than Breath of the Wild, I feel like we're sort of back where we started. Climbing in the rain is still a no-go, though you can find clothing with slip resistance.
Much like how I found this bulletproof vest.
Well, this doesn't do a damn thing. I just feel like Tears of the Kingdom doesn't really improve on much from Breath of the Wild. Rather, introduces a ton of stuff which can in theory improve issues from that game, but those issues are still there, and if they actually end up improving them, it's a bit situational sometimes.
Oh my god, Scott. It has to be opposite day where you are, because you actually think we give a about your Tears of the Kingdom opinions? You nerd emoji looking fuck.
I've been feeling damn good lately, but I know I need to balance my emotions more, so thank you for hurting me.
Hey Scott, this is Matthew from Tucson, Arizona. I don't actually care about Tears of the Kingdom, but I have to ask you, have you ever paid your taxes?
Hey Scott, what does the C in Scott stand for? Fucking idiot?
No, it stands for thank you for your input.
Tears of the Kingdom is a brand new game, not something that could have just been an update or an expansion pack. It's its own entity, there's no getting around that. And because of that, its insistence on following Breath of the Wild's format holds it back tremendously in my opinion. It hits the exact same bullet points of what you did in the previous game. The tutorial section involves going to 4 shrines to get your abilities. Then you have to go to 4 different regions on the map to basically do the dungeons of the game, and all the while find Koroks hiding in the same types of places, which collecting them does the same exact thing they did in Breath of the Wild, much like running around finding the tears, which is this game's memories. Find the shrines, complete the shrines, they do the exact same thing they did in the previous game. But when you find the Master Sword, oh, it's completely different this time around. You need more stamina to regain it instead of hearts.
Who are you?
So much of what you do in Tears of the Kingdom follows the exact same template as Breath of the Wild, and I get it, it's a sequel. I was expecting it to follow a lot of the same tropes, but I mean, beat for beat, this follows that game too closely. This structure worked great in Breath of the Wild, and it works fine here, but honestly, this all felt more natural in that game. Why were you going to the 4 different regions there? Why, to free the 4 divine beasts, because your goal is to waltz into Hyrule Castle and eliminate Calamity Ganon right from the start. But going to these 4 regions and completing these help you become stronger and make Calamity Ganon weaker. Why are you going to the 4 different regions in Tears of the Kingdom? To waste my goddamn time. The story in Tears of the Kingdom was treated as if it was so much more in-depth and better than Breath of the Wild. While, in my opinion, I honestly think it's more shallow and far worse. Breath of the Wild's plot was really basic. However, I would never call it bad. I think it was perfect for what they were trying to do. Practically everything was optional. You didn't need to complete the divine beast, you didn't need to find the memories, you could do whatever you want, so I can tell how difficult it was to craft a story around this. But they did it. It's very simple, though it has some great character moments, and the concept of Link suffering from amnesia and having to piece together memories by finding locations and recalling certain scenes worked well with the non-linear setup of the game. These memories make sense to be seen out of order because that's how you regain memories. Oftentimes, you just remember a certain thing that happened. Don't know what happened before, what happened after, just that. And it's not like these memories are revealing any vital story details you need to know. It's all supplemental. You already know what happened at the end of the day, so what these are more focused on is showcasing Zelda as a character, who she was, what she was interested in, what she struggled with, how her and Link interacted, which makes the drive to rescue her that much greater. As time passes, I respect how this game does story more and more. Though, once again, the story itself, nothing groundbreaking. I mostly think it's good because it works incredibly well in tandem with how Breath of the Wild is designed as a game. Tears of the Kingdom ever f around with an antonym? This story is lame as hell, man. It isn't a good time with the gameplay like with Breath of the Wild, but it's also not good in its own right. Zelda is captured by the resurrected corpse of the Demon King, and Link is nearly killed in the process, awaking with a replaced arm courtesy of the spirit of the first king of Hyrule, the goat with abs. Go down to Lookout Landing, and Purah tells you, man, you should check out those 4 regions you already went to in the last game to get some answers as to what the hell is going on here. So you go to a region, you see Zelda walking around in the distance ominously, doing evil in the sort. Everybody goes, is that Princess Zelda? Why would she be doing such things? You do some stuff for them, you end up at one of the dungeons, do that, the boss pops up, which usually doesn't feel impactful. Many of these felt about as evil and threatening as a Hinox you'd find dozens of times in the open world. The different variations of Ganon boss fights in Breath of the Wild got old, yeah, but in the context of what was going on in that game, they felt like a bigger deal. You beat everything, an ancestor of your partner from that region appears and tells you what happened all those years ago and lends them their secret stone. I hope that sounded interesting, because if it didn't, that's on me. I need to learn how to spin bullshit stories better. But also because it's the same damn thing in each of the regions. And why am I doing all of this? For research? After the first region, I think I have a pretty good idea of what's happening. And everybody's constantly befuddled as to why Zelda would be doing all of this. But Link has seen all of this from the very start. He saw the resurrection, Zelda falling, but we just let everybody else put it together first. Which, can I just ask, who the hell is Link as a character at this point? Throughout the entire series, he's been considered the link between the player and the game. And up until Breath of the Wild, you can name him whatever you wanted, he never spoke, really driving home how Nintendo viewed him like a sort of avatar, a stand-in for the player. However, Breath of the Wild broke one of many series traditions by not allowing you to name Link. He was just Link. He's officially his own character now. He's not you, he's not me, he's not shit in my pants Jerry, he's Link. So why doesn't he act like it, damn it? It's so odd to me that the games where Link is an actual character, he has significantly less character than in the games where he's supposed to be more of a blank slate for the player. Now, I feel that over time, the developers sort of stopped viewing Link as this and just kept letting you name the character, for example, because every Zelda did. You look at a game like Wind Waker with the most expressive Link of all time, or Skyward Sword with a genuine love story between him and Zelda. You can't tell me Nintendo believes this Link's name is Scott Wozniak, because if they do, well, I have a legal case to make. But it's just baffling how this Link, who is entirely his own character, definitively named Link, just stands there for the most part with a blank stare, which is 10 times more irritating when I have to view possessed Zelda walking around and act like I don't know what's going on. 4 times. Yes, let me hear what this ghost has to say about the imprisoning war, which consists of people standing around Ganondorf and Zelda saying, "Don't worry, Link will save everything." Multiple times. There's nothing new that's ever learned from any of these. They all say the same thing. That's just the first 40 hours, so it picks up later, I promise. Littered throughout the world are the tears, which will show what Zelda's been up to, which, like I said, replace the memories from the previous game. Since you're finding these randomly throughout the game, there's no way around it. You're gonna find them out of chronological order. The memories worked in this regard. The tears? I don't think so, man. So these showcase Zelda after becoming stuck in the past and meeting and working with Abgo and wife who's okay with that. This is a pretty straightforward story of Zelda and the King and Queen of Hyrule trying to stop Ganondorf that has no benefit to being viewed out of order. I don't understand why they did this outside of, it's what Breath of the Wild did. And honestly, there's nothing really interesting I learned from these outside of the Master Sword is a girl. You know exactly what's going on in this story at almost every second, which makes the forced mystery of what's going on just tiresome. I've seen many allude to how this game has a far better narrative than Breath of the Wild, but I disagree. I bet it feels that way just because the game pretends to care about story more, but all it boils down to is a plot that has nothing to really say. It's not bad, I just call it kinda lame. Something that does the job it needed to do, but in a way that felt far more forced than its predecessor.
Alright, answer me this, bitch. Have you ever woken up in the morning and tried having a good opinion?
Thank you for your input. Unfortunately, I've always wanted to have bad opinions and not wake up.
Hey Scott, your opinion on Tears of the Kingdom is so bad, my wife left me. Thanks for that, asshole.
It's touching when somebody says I affected their life.
Hey Scott, go f*** yourself.
Tears of the Kingdom's big hook getting a grand reveal at E3 2021, being the focal point of the box art and basing the tutorial on it, the sky, man, this thing. Well, at least in the sense that it really isn't as big of a deal as they made it seem. What's a bigger deal is the verticality of the game, going up crazy high and being able to regain your footing on a sky island to plan your next move, which is great, but the sky islands aren't what's great here. What is the point of these? They're not that prevalent, and when they are, there's oftentimes nothing of note to do on them. That opening section, that's it. That's the sky's magnum opus. I was expecting an aha moment, but what we got was pretty much just random floating platforms in the sky, many of which feel copy and pasted, and even then, there aren't a ton of them, so advertising this as a key part of the game when this is the finalized map of the sky, like, there's so much dead space. So you'd assume what is there is finally crafted to be as purposeful and worthwhile as possible. Well, here's the Sky Island. And here's the point. Oh no! I like that these are here, but they feel like a giant missed opportunity. Like, there should be something more to these, because at the moment, whenever I land on one, oftentimes there's nothing there. The best use for them, honestly, is to get a good look at everything from incredibly high vantage points, which for a game like this is incredibly useful, so I don't want to downplay that. But at that point, they're functionally the same as the towers from the previous game. They're just higher up now, and when it comes to what there is to do on them, I was just expecting more than, oh my god, a frog. The more substantial layer of the world in comparison is easily the depths, which were a big surprise to everyone playing their first time. I mean, these weren't discussed at all pre-release. And that first time you dive in here, it is jaw-dropping. Considering this is the same world as Breath of the Wild, but now has not only a world above it, but a world below, all running on technology that's the equivalent of boiled relish.
Sounds better than I thought.
To go from the highest point possible all the way down to the depths in real time is incredible. There's no getting around that. But when I'm actually down there, this is fucking awesome! I think the depths are an amazing addition, but after that initial shock of being able to go down here and all the materials you can find, there's really not a lot going on. Not enough actual things to do outside of keep moving forward in the dark, and when I find something like a giant boss, I spend so much time trying to take it down, wasting loads of my inventory to end up getting basically nothing worthwhile in return. This area is massive, but everything just looks the same, especially early on when it's pitch black and you're fumbling around in the dark before you realize to use the bright bloom seeds. But even after you illuminate everything, this all feels auto-generated. I like going down here for a change of pace and to collect better materials, but that's kind of it. There's not enough productive activities to do down here for me to feel like I'm doing anything more and just wasting my time. At least this game has actual dungeons now. Or does it? I do think the Divine Beast caught a lot of flack, and much of it was justified. Though, looking back, my main problem stems from how they all look the same visually. The concept of a dungeon being inside a giant robot animal and moving a part of the animal to then change the map layout on the fly is pretty damn cool. It's just, obviously these could have been so much more. An actual dungeon in a traditional Zelda game is so intricate and large with unique visual and audible identity. The Divine Beasts were all pretty much the same thing, just a different layout. For Tears of the Kingdom, I wanted dungeons that were as robust as they were in games like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. These are basically divine beasts again, you just called them temples. These aren't bad whatsoever, I think they're all well designed and can have some really great ideas, but these ain't anywhere near as good as other dungeons throughout the series. I think the main problem is, they all follow the same format. Go to these 5 waypoints, turn something on. And while each of these have some really cool gimmicks and puzzles to make them more memorable than the Divine Beasts, now oftentimes, the journey to these temples is incredible, but the temples themselves just feel like they're missing something. While they're more distinct from one another than in Breath of the Wild, they're still pretty bland in comparison to other games. Following the exact same template as one another, the boss fights not being anything too compelling, these don't feel as finely crafted as something like a Skyward Sword dungeon. And while these are good, these are more Divine Beast than traditional dungeon in my opinion.
Hey, Scott. I'm just calling in with my barbershop choir with this little message. And 1, 2, 3, 4. You're just plain incorrect and dumb.
Very cute. And hurtful. I'm in pain.
Hey, Scott. First-time viewer, long-time caller here. You know, I've agreed with you up until this point, but did you ever consider that we both might be f***ing idiots?
Hey!
The frame rate, it can get a little spunky. Never unplayable whatsoever, but it is something that could be improved upon. Much like the resolution, which, I don't know man, things sometimes look more pixelated than Breath of the Wild, which is fair considering how much more this game does, but it's still a little disappointing. The voice acting is pretty much of a similar quality to the predecessor, which means it's okay, but we just have a lot of awkward deliveries. But I wish there was more of it. For this duology finally introducing voice acting to mainline Zelda, they don't use it a lot. We still have giant walls of text to read here, which is kind of the point of wanting Zelda to move in this direction. They only use it in a handful of cutscenes and just for specific points in the dungeons where your partner says, oh, looks like we only have this many things left to do. And I just feel like it's used a bit too sporadically, especially when this is Nintendo's first $70 release. Yeah, because all this wasn't enough. I want Rauru to say the word milk.
Finally, something worth $70. Well, those were all my complaints about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Oh my god! So the final boss here is actually pretty good. We have a difficult and tactful sword fight with Ganondorf, requiring good reflexes via flurry rushes and parries. Took a while to get it down, but when I finally did, it was an incredibly satisfying confrontation, leading into the final phase, which was bitch and piss easy, but was a cool and memorable experience nonetheless. But I'm not talking about this, I'm talking about the lead up to it. See, when you're ready to take on Ganondorf, you have to find him in the depths of Hyrule Castle, where every enemy lurking down there in the environment itself is soaked in gloom, which is a substance in the depths that will make
make some of your hearts unusable until you return to an area with natural light, which you ain't getting that on the road to the boss, so you have to be unbelievably careful, avoid enemy encounters if possible, watch where you step. That's all fairly doable, until this section where you have to fight dozens of enemies all covered in gloom. Well, you're surrounded by this stuff, but it's too dark to realize you're standing in it until it's too late. So when I finally get past this section, boom, 3 hearts. I spent dozens of hours trying to get as many hearts as possible to take on Ganondorf, and what did that amount to? You see that? It's nothing. So, surprisingly, that's all fine and good. You know, I appreciate a good challenge, but it became obvious to me this was a journey I had to better prepare for. I discovered there were meals you could cook that restored hearts taken away from gloom. There were some that made you resistant towards gloom. Great stuff. I'll probably have to go through the whole journey again. Fine. I don't wanna, but I guess it's my fault for not preparing, even though I didn't know what to prepare for. But you can't leave this area. You're stuck there. The game expects you to go through with the whole Ganondorf fight, even if you got whittled down to 3 hearts. The only way to leave is by reloading a previous save file, then travel to a different location, make some meals to help yourself, redo this entire section, then alright, I'm back at the boss. Let me get rid of those gloom hearts, let me apply some gloom resistance, and in Ganondorf's 3rd phase, he just flat out removes hearts. It's fine. It's fine. It's not fine, but it's fine. Okay, now those were all my complaints about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I wish Zelda was spelled with a Q.
Alright, I mean, we could be here all day because Tears of the Kingdom isn't perfect. Much like every game ever made. And while I find Tears of the Kingdom to be more imperfect than many other games, those imperfections are the end result of a game that has done so much that no other game could even dream of doing. Throughout it all, my opinion of this game has definitely went up and down a bit. While I was always enjoying it, sometimes I found it to be an incredible, one-of-a-kind experience, while other times I found it to be too derivative of Breath of the Wild, with some elements not coming together as tightly as I would have expected and wanted. But in the end, I mean, I played this game for over 100 hours. It's obviously become one of my favorite games of all time. The issues I had with it are still issues for the most part, and I can totally understand why they would drag many a player down and how some players just didn't find anything special about this game. And they're not wrong! It's Breath of the Wild again, with some new abilities, a sky that has nothing to do in it, and depths that feel like auto-generated areas to grind materials in. But for me personally, while I felt a lot of this at some points, I ended up seeing how the game kinda expects you to feel that way. Part of the magic of Tears of the Kingdom is re-experiencing the world of Breath of the Wild in an entirely new way that initially feels only subtly different. But man, pop that game back in and you'll see, like, these games are so similar, but so damn different at the same time. Just moment to moment, traversing the map is night and day comparing the two. What Nintendo was able to accomplish with this was a sequel that reused so much, but introduced such meaningful additions, tweaks, and differences, so it stands on its own compared to its predecessor. I don't think this replaces Breath of the Wild, it complements it. It helps you appreciate the world so much in new ways. It's such a unique feeling from a game that initially, seemingly, wasn't unique in the slightest. And that's how a game I don't think is perfect ended up being one of my favorite games of all time. And that should mellow out our voicemails a bit.
Hey, Scott.
Well, there's only 2 ways to get out of this continuous hell. Either apologize and have everybody critique my apology, which boils down to how well I can lie while writing an apology, or I ruin my reputation entirely, so then instead of people telling me I'm wrong, they disregard me entirely. Didn't work.